Good morning, everyone. Today we are here to present a report regarding to ethical principles of counseling. But first, what is counseling? Counseling is a collaborative effort between the counselor and client. Professional counselors help clients identify goals and potential solutions to problems which cause emotional turmoil, seek to improve communication and coping skills, strengthen self-esteem, and promote behavior change and optimal mental health. There are four ethical principles of counseling, and there are 1. Autonomy of individuals. It is based on the right to freedom of action and freedom of choice insofar as the pursuit of this freedom does not interfere with the freedom of others. It is the principle that addresses respect for independence and self-determination. This principle allows the individual to have the freedom of choice and action. When the clients can make their own decisions and to act as their own values, this is the time where the counselor have a responsibility to encourage their client.
According to David Lloyd Howard, this principle emphasizes the importance of the client commitment to participating in counseling, or usually on a voluntary basis practitioners who respect their client's autonomy, ensure accuracy in any advertising of information given in advice of services offered, seek freely given and adequately informed consent, engage in explicit contracting in advance of any commitment by the client, protect privacy, protect confidentiality, normally make any disclosure of confidential information conditional on the consent of the person concerned and information the client in advance of foreseeable conflicts of interest or as soon as possible after such conflict become apparent. The principle of autonomy opposes the manipulation of clients against their will, even for beneficial social ends.
According to Kate C. Giggins and Bridger Asempapa, there are two important ways to encouraging clients to be autonomous. First, helping their client to understand how their decision and their values may be received within the context of the society in which they live, and how they may infringe on the right of others. Second, it is related to client's ability to make sound and rational decisions. Persons not capable of making own decisions, such as children and individuals with mental disabilities, should not be allowed to act on decisions that could harm others or that could harm themselves or others.
What will happen if we lack of autonomy of individual? If we lack of individual of autonomy, others people may control our own action, think and even our own feelings. We can depend on what they want and we can no longer have our own decision in life. We react and worry to someone expectation and to someone opinion about ourselves. We might have difficulty making decision and taking action on our own.
Principle of non-maleficence. Non-maleficence is the concept of not causing harm to others, often explained as above all do no harm. According to Kitchener, Rosenbaum, and Stadler, that this principle is considered by some to be most critical of all the principles, even though theoretically they are all of equal weight. Forrester Miller and Rubenstein says that this principle reflects both the idea of not inflicting intentional harm and not engaging in actions that risk harming others. Weighing potential harm against potential benefits is important in a counselor's effort toward ensuring no harm.
It refers to the instruction to all helpers or healers that they must above all do no harm. Beneficence to refers to the order that promote human welfare. Both non-maleficence and beneficence occur in the prominence in codes of practice that counselor must warrant that they are trained to the appropriate level to competence.
In applying the non-maleficence principle, harm is considered from several aspects. Harm to the city. The demonstrated commitment to ongoing professional development, openness in discussing her value conflict, respect for the supervision process, integrity by demonstrating honesty about her value conflict, and self-awareness with regard to her personal and professional limitations are all desired characteristics of professional disposition outlined in a study by Spurgeon, Gibbons, and Cochran. Moreover, the city could be triggered by the situation and possibly re-traumatized.
Harm to the client. If the city were mandated to work with an adult male sex offender, the offender may be harmed due to the city's inability and to establish the necessary therapeutic environment required to foster a genuine working alliance. The cornerstone of the therapeutic process needed to promote change. Harm to the agency if the dismissal, if made without be appreciate, cause harm may be done by the agency, exposing the agency to litigation. Principle of justice. Concerned with the fair distribution of resources and the service unless there is some acceptable reason for treating them differently. For concealing, the principle has a particularly relevant question to access.
Principle of justice requires being just and fair to all of their clients and respecting their human rights and their dignity. It is based on fairness and equity to the client. The counselor acting a manner that is non-discriminatory in order to provide the client with an opportunity to the client's own treatment and own recovery. A referral should made by someone who is capable to provide fair and equitable services.
As Kitchener point out, is treating equally and unequally, but in proportion to the relevant difference. Justice doesn't mean treating all the individuals the same. If someone is to be treated differently, the counselor needs to be able to offer a relational. They explain the necessity and appropriateness of treating the individual differently.
An example is the counselor gives George, who is blind, a form that is in Braille. Braille is a form of written language for blind people. It has a pattern of raised dots that are felt with the fingertips. Sometimes it will go through the form with George orally. Instead of giving George a written form or fill out, the counselor will treat George the same as any other client in all other regards.
Principle of fidelity shares to presence of loyalty, reliability, and dependability and action in good faith. The role of confidentiality reveals the importance of fidelity. Entering into a contract means to stay with the client and give the case his or her effort. Client must trust the counselor and have faith with triopathic relationship if growth is occurred. Therefore, the counselor must not threaten the triopathic relationship or to leave obligation unfulfilled.
Fidelity concerned with the trust relationship between the client and counselor. Being honorable is seen as the basic to understanding and resolving ethical issues. The benefits of the clients are first in place before those counselors, even in such fidelity, is uncomfortable for them. Furthermore, they should also make every effort to make sure that clients' expectations have reasonable prospects of being met. They have to contemplate confidentiality as a duty arising from the client's trust. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you have learned something from us.